All right, welcome back, everyone. James Fox, hello, and welcome to the Midnight Highway Radio. How are you doing tonight?
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good, actually. Let me ask you this, buddy. Tell us about, I always like to do this at the beginning of the show. I know I introduced you right before the show began, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, anything I might have left out that, anybody that don't know you out there, shed some light on James Fox.
Well, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm kidding. Well, I'll start off by saying that I got involved with the paranormal, or UFOs, in the early 90s. And my father, who's a mainstream journalist, was extremely concerned about my future. He kept saying it's a dead-end road, there's nothing to it, it's a career killer, please, reconsider. And, I'm one of those people that's like, the more you tell me no, the more I, want to actually do it. It actually probably propelled me to do it even more. And so I got involved with something that pretty much my entire family was, family members writing letters trying to discourage me from doing what I wanted to do. So I finally decided, hey, I'll just do it alone, without the support of anyone. Not like my family's independently wealthy anyway, but so I did, and I launched this 20-year-long journey on. I hate to use this expression because it sounds kind of corny, but in my pursuit of truth. But it is a personal journey for me, and I share my results with my documentaries with the public, and I've been very fortunate in the sense that. Each time I've finished a film, I've sold it to, either Discovery or Sci-Fi or NBC Universal bought one with Sci-Fi broadcast, and just recently A&E History Channel. So I've been very, very lucky like that. I've done stuff on spec, and then managed to, not only make my money back, but make a little bit to keep going. It's funny. It's like the more I learn about the subject matter, and I hope it's okay that we're talking about UFOs right now. I'm assuming that it is.
Oh yes, of course. That's what it's about, buddy. UFOs
okay.
and aliens.
The more I learn, the more people I meet with, the more I realize I don't know. You know what I mean? And the more questions I have about the whole phenomenon. I mean, I'm absolutely, positively, beyond a shadow of doubt, convinced that they're real and that they're physical, and they leave physical trace case evidence. But where they come from, why they're here, it's all pure speculation. And I don't even know, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how many answers those in the know have.
Right. You're right. You're definitely right, man. You forgot to mention your eye color, though. Are they blue or are they...
How about my weight?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you were a female, I'd be...
Chocolate, chocolate brown eyes.
All I would hear is the doo.
People often tell me I'm full of, beep because of my eye color, but, all the way up to my...
Let me ask you this,
I've had people come to me, it's like, oh, you're that UFO guy. Oh, yeah. You don't actually believe in any of that. Beep. I'm like, oh, no, of course not. I'm just obviously in it for the money, of course realize that I'm broke, so that wouldn't make a very good reason to do it. But yeah, there are a number of things that we can talk about, any specific cases, or I could talk a little bit about. It's entirely up to you what your audience would like to hear.
And those of you out there listening right now, if you got any questions, just raise your hand and we'll get you on here fairly soon, or you could type it up if you're too shy to get on the mic. But James, I did want to ask you this. How many of the UFOs that we see today do you think might be ET in origin? And I know this goes back to what you stated earlier about speculation. But
yes.
What do you think? I mean, is there a percentage, or what do you think?
First of all, what I try to tell people, because obviously we all know that a UFO is just that. It's just an unidentified flying object. It could be a balloon. It could be a flock of birds. It could be a stealth aircraft. It could be ET. It could be a number of things. But UFO is somewhat synonymous with in the public eye with what we assume to be extraterrestrial. So when I say UFO, we'll just assume that we're on the same page with that we're meaning that it's a bona fide UFO. In other words, after extensive and exhaustive research and investigation, we still draw the conclusion that the object remains unidentified flying object, in which case one can only assume its origin. But first of all, define a bona fide UFO, and I'm sure your listeners already know this, but anything, basically that has the ability to, first of all, doesn't have any wings, doesn't have any tail, has the ability to hover, doesn't disturb the air, doesn't make any sound, no visible means of propulsion, and can go from a standstill to out of sight in the blink of an eye. All this without any, sonic boom or anything like that. And it also can, change, do 90-degree angle turns at high speed. That is a bona fide UFO. Now, the question is, and they've been observed in our skies for a long time, possibly hundreds of years, thousands of years, but at least the modern-day UFO wave since World War II, a little earlier. The question is, who's in possession of that technology?
Right, exactly.
Is it, and I tell people often, it's like, well, okay, well then if it's up, someone's done a pretty damn good job of concealing this. They're not flying around on Jet A fuel. So someone's done a very good job of concealing this incredibly advanced technology from the general public for God knows how many years. And there's a whole slew of reasons why I'm against that. I mean, obviously, if it could replace fossil fuels, we'd have a lot of energy independence and starting going to the environmental impacts and all that stuff. So that in itself would be a big, big story. Of course, Earth being visited also, in my view, is a very big, big story. I tend to believe that the vast majority of unidentified flying objects are, in fact, misidentified aircraft. I could list the whole things of Air Force explanations, swamp gas, stealth technology, the planet Venus. I mean, there's the whole, satellites in space or flocks of geese, or, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, right.
There is a core, I think 5 or 10%, and most investigators will tell you this, even on an official level, that truly cannot. And that the most likely scenario for the remaining stubborn sort of 5-10% would be extraterrestrial. I mean, if it doesn't come from anything made on this planet, then then it's not of this planet. It would be extraterrestrial, right?
Yeah. Do you think there's anybody, the best scientist in the world, anybody with NASA that could reverse engineer downed craft, and I'm talking downed ET craft, the craft that you're seeing do 90-degree turns in the sky? Because I don't see how in the hell you could make something like that actually happen. I mean,
well, here's the thing. I think it was Stanton Friedman that brought this to my attention. He's got a very comprehensive understanding of technology and that. He said, imagine giving Christopher Columbus a nuclear submarine and having him dissect it and build one. Just not going to happen, right? And it could be that very well that scenario here. Having said that, I'm pretty well convinced that I think it's called the TVR or the TR3. There's a platform, I think it's roughly the size of a football field, a big wedge, that were most likely, I saw a bunch of video footage, actually I was investigating some cases that happened recently in Fresno, California of all places, of this object, and it makes a slight buzzing sound, but they don't do 90-degree angle turns at high speed. They don't accelerate extremely, literally from the standstill to out of sight in the blink of an eye, but they do have the ability to hover and maneuver in the night sky with making very little noise, and without any wings, without any air disturbance and that sort of thing. So perhaps we have some sort of, we figured out some sort of anti-gravitic technology or something. Whether or not we've successfully reverse engineered what we recovered at Roswell and possibly other crash sites, I can't say. I don't think so, but I don't know. I doubt it, but I just don't know.
Now, in 2007, correct me if I'm wrong on the year here, I believe you spoke at the National Press Club. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that was on UFOs. So there, I thought, wow, maybe we're getting somewhere. You're taking it to that level. You know what I mean?
Well, what we did was, it's funny actually, because this whole whole event that we held at the National Press Club in November of 2007 kind of came to me in a dream. I sort of saw it. You know, it's like one thing when you think something up in your mind, like you imagine doing something, and that's one thing. You project doing something.
Yes.
This sort of I saw it like a film strip in my mind. And I woke up the next morning, I called the National Press Club and I booked the room. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any witnesses, but we made it happen. And my dream was sort of like the field of, you ever see that movie, Field of Dreams, where the guy figures he builds the field.
Oh, yeah.
Right. My dream was like, hey, I'll create, I'll pick a venue and I'll create this event with some of the most solid, credible witnesses from around the world, the highest ranking military and government officials I can get my hands on. And I'll have them come, sort of like a disclosure that the venue is the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and we'll do some CNN coverage of the thing and blah, blah, blah. And, that'll get kind of the word out. But the irony is like we did that. And it was considered one of the most credible civilian efforts, I believe. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but that's what it's called. I did it in conjunction with Leslie Kean. Efforts ever done, and the people that attended it, and the news people that were there, were I think had little doubt of the reality of the phenomenon, but it didn't really do a whole lot beyond that. And the interesting thing about that is, I'll take it a step further, and tell me if I'm just rambling here, but
no, go ahead.
The interesting thing about it, I find, is that you talk to people, and there are so many very significant things going on in the world right now, politically and environmentally, geopolitically, dependence on energy dependence. There's a slew of things, healthcare, all the above that we're all very, very passionate about. But you ask all these people, hey, what level of significance would you give it if suspending judgment and if Earth was being visited by extraterrestrial race? How significant of a discovery would you give that? And everyone I've ever talked to is like, oh, that would be the most significant discovery of all time.
I agree.
I can't seem to understand, while the press that attended our event, why they wouldn't use their resource to follow up. I handed it to them on a silver platter. Why wouldn't they follow up on these cases, these stories? Why wouldn't they just give like 1/10 or 1/50th of the budget they've done on Elia Gonzalez or Monica Lewinsky or any of these scandals, and put their efforts into getting to the bottom of this phenomenon, because it's so significant and potentially so explosive? I don't understand why.
No, and you know what, James? They rather pay $20 million to somebody that could throw a football.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. And I remember, like, I've helped promote a few films on the subject matter, but it was all pretty much just Hollywood. I won't mention any names, but Hollywood garbage kind of stuff, old sensational, whatever. And I'm thinking of the budget they had, and I thought, my God, if I had 1/10 that budget, I feel I could probably blow the lid off this thing. But for some reason, I don't know, Sean. I don't know.
Now,
I'm not trying to sound like I'm discouraged or anything. Believe me, I'm far from giving up. I've got a few things in the works right now, and if your audience is interested or not, I'll be willing to share a rather interesting story that happened to me fairly recently.
Oh yes, we're going to get into that, and let me tell you, man. I mean, naturally, you have to be discouraged. Anytime you're investigating UFOs, you get the runaround, or it's not getting publicized, or if it makes Fox News, they're like, ooh, here's the aliens, and then they're laughing, and they're joking about it and mocking the subject. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. And, it's interesting. I know for a fact that very high-level politicians and people have made inquiries to determine what's really going on, and every one of them that I have personally talked to has said they got the runaround.
Yeah. And you also appeared on Larry King Live, as I stated in the intro. Tell us about your first time. I mean, it ain't often that people get to speak to somebody that went on the Larry King Live show. What was that like, your first time?
Oh, it's really funny, actually, because I got the phone call from a woman, Avriel, and she said, I'm a producer for Larry King Live, and I'd like to speak to James Fox, please. And I thought, who's prank calling me now? And I sort of thought, well, just, hold on back for a second, James. What if it's a real call? I better not. So So I said, well, this is he. And so, yeah, this is Abrielle, and we would like to. We found you some stories that I broke and stuff like that with the governor of Arizona, and we'd like to invite you on a show. And I thought, really? Really? You're inviting me on Larry King? Really? And she said, no, we're really serious. It's July 7th. It's going to be sort of in conjunction with I believe it was the 60th anniversary of the Roswell affair. It was in 2007. And we'd like to be on the panel. So it's very exciting, right? It was extremely exciting. I was, thinking, my God, this is amazing. A huge platform, a massive audience, live, so they can't really change it, right?
Yeah, your heart rate had to be about 160 beats per minute.
Yeah, it was going up, but I'll tell you what happened was I was fairly cool until I went to the green room, and in the green room there was Buzz Aldrin, the guy who landed on the moon with Neil Armstrong, former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, Stanton Friedman, I believe it might have been Michael Shermer of Skeptic Magazine, but it could have been Seth Shostak. I'm sorry, I don't remember right off the top of my head.
I think it was Michael. I think it was.
Was it? Okay. And it's cool. We're kind of like, making jokes back and forth, and I think Michael Shermer had a book, and I said, hey, sign it over to me, UFOs are real, and we had a big laugh because he was the last thing he was ever going to say. And everything was going smooth, and then the security came out and said, Mr. Fox, we're ready for you. And they wired me up, and they escorted me through, and my sister was coming with me. Just, she came with me to the green room and led me out through the production sites, and it was all very industrial. They had like cables lying across the floors and lighting fixtures everywhere. And at the end of all this commotion, at the end of all this mess, was a desk and chairs and a little backdrop and nice proper lighting. There was Larry King sitting down at a desk. And I thought, wow, this is kind of funky. I thought I was going to be a little more stylish for Larry King seen in live. And my sister got to a point where she couldn't go beyond any further the security point. She pats me on the back, and this is what she said. I don't recall her having said this. Go get him, Tiger. And I heard this. I felt the pat on the back, and then I heard garble. It was like my hearing was garbled, and I started to get tunnel vision. Now, this has never happened to me before. I didn't realize what was happening. I was actually going into kind of a panic, I think a little bit.
Oh, I've had panic attacks. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm getting escorted out there, and they sit me down, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, this is the moment I've been waiting for. Get it together, James. And the more pressure I put on myself to get it together, the less likely I was to actually get it together. And finally and I was panicking, and they were like, we're going live in 30,
Oh, man.
Oh, my God, I can hear my heart. Just like in the movies, you hear your heart rate on the inside of your chest, And I'm hearing everything slightly garbled. And this woman kind of whispers in my ear. She's like, are you okay? Do you want some water?
Oh, that probably made it worse.
A soda pop or something? I was like, well, I said, is it that obvious? She's like, yeah. Oh, God, no. I just kept saying to myself over and over, James, you got to get it together. This is the moment we're waiting for. You got to get it together. And then right out the gate, we went live. 3, 2, going live. And I'm just going, oh, I don't believe this is happening. And I'm sitting there on set with the man who landed on the moon with Neil Armstrong and the former governor of Arizona who saved Bill Clinton from a drowning incident back in college.
Oh, wow. Yes.
All this stuff's going on, and I just can't believe I'm there. And, to be honest with you, I think that George Norrie was there, too.
No, really? Really?
He was. I think he was. I definitely went on with George Norrie, and I think he was on that panel.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you what, I did get to see you on there. I watched it. I know you were on there a few times, and you look good, man. I mean, seriously.
Oh, well, hey, I tripped up a little bit out the gate, and then I kind of got it together somewut.
Well, you're going to be your biggest critic.
As time went on, I got more comfortable doing it, and I actually went on Larry King 9 times.
9
you believe
times.
That?
Weren't they doing it like every Friday it was going to be UFOs?
Hey, let me tell you what happened. It was really funny, actually. The executive producer, I probably shouldn't give out her name, but the executive producer of the show, well, anyone could find out who that was, her son really liked what I did. He was just a huge fan. And so I guess he was constantly telling her, put more shows on. So they'd call me and say, hey, we want to do 5 shows. We want to do 3 shows. Let's pick the subject matter. Let's put it all together. And it was great for me. It was a great promotional tool for me. It was good practice, and it was fun, you know?
Right.
It's great to have a budget. The budgets got smaller as the years went on, but in 2007, man, we had some great budgets. I mean, I organized shows. The one that you should definitely watch if you can, I think it's one of the more credible shows ever on CNN, quite honestly, because the first half we didn't have a debunker.
Did you guys get Bill Nye?
He was outgunned because we had satellite feed. I believe it was from Denmark because Nick Pope was on the road. So they had satellite feed from Denmark. They had a satellite feed from, I believe it was Chicago, with a former FAA official, John Callahan. They had flown in Colonel Charles Holt from the Bentwaters incident. They'd flown in from back east Jim Peniston from the Bentwaters incident. Jim Peniston is the guy that actually touched the landed UFO at the joint United States Air Force British Air Base back in December of 1980. Myself and who else was that? It must have been George Norrie, and I'm trying to think there was another military guy on board.
What was the name of this show, James? People are asking in the chat room. Is this Larry King again, or?
Yeah, Larry King, yeah.
Okay.
And it was November 4th, I believe, 3rd or 4th. It's a great show. It was a great show. I mean, because people always associated UFOs with these sort of ambiguous lights off in the distance, and you know what I mean, like one way or the other. These guys were talking about, we had a colonel, the deputy base commander, we had the guy, one of the gentlemen, Jim Peniston, who actually touched the landed UFO, and we had the drawings of the craft, we had the little logbook from the Air Force we were passing around, and Larry King, we went to, I'll never forget this, we went to a commercial break. There wasn't any debunkers on for the first half hour. It was amazing, right? Here are all these really credible people, and George Norrie was not on that panel. That was the second time. George Norrie was not on that panel. And went to commercial break, and Larry King looked over at Fife Symington and the colonel, and he said, and he had this sort of, I don't want to say puzzled look, but this look on his face like, wow. And he looked over and he said, this stuff's really real, isn't it? And the colonel nodded and he said, yeah, it is real. And the former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, he said, yeah, this is a very real phenomenon. And the look he had on his face was like, wow, why don't I know more about this? Why am I not in the loop? You know what I mean?
Wow, yeah.
I'll never forget that moment as long as I live. It was a commercial break. I wish the world could have seen it. But that's what happened.
Now,
it was an incredible panel. I don't think anything's like it's been done since. They let me pick everybody. So, of course, I picked the most credible people.
Oh,
they had a budget.
Exactly. And then you got to get Stanton Friedman in there. You just got to.
Yeah, well, Stanton Friedman's I've been on with him a couple times.
Yep. All right. You said you got a pretty interesting story to share.
Yes.
Explain that.
Okay, this is really cool. It's kind of long. You guys ready?
Oh, we're ready.
Okay, so I'm working for a TV company right now, and I wish like hell I could tell you who it was, but I can't.
Oh, I know.
I talked to the PR department, and they said I can't do it. We're launching a TV show next month. There's a bunch of cool episodes. Granted, it's television, but I brought as much reality to it as I could possibly do within my means. I really did. I brought some of the best witnesses, some of the best cases. We went around the world. Really cool stuff. But, you know, the company that we're working for, it's quite a big company, you know, they're more concerned about ratings and, you know, entertainment factor and sense of adventure. We gave all that to them, but we also delivered some very credible cases, some very solid witnesses and video evidence, that sort of thing. So overall, I think it's going to be a pretty cool show. Anyway, so there's a deathbed statement made by this colonel named Colonel Weinbrenner. And they said, you know, we have this report on the internet. We'd like to kind of validate it. We want to follow up about this deathbed statement. I said, well, all right, what's the deal? And I think it was like 2007, but I don't know exactly. And it was in, I think, San Antonio, Texas. But I could be wrong on the San Antonio. It was in Texas, roughly 2007. I'm sorry I don't remember the exact dates. But I can tell you his name was Colonel Weinbrenner, and he was head of the Foreign Technology at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the 70s and 80s, or 60s and 70s and 80s. Probably 60s and 70s and possibly early 80s is what I'm guessing. So this is all factual, what I'm telling you right now. This happened.
Okay.
So he's dying. He gets the attention of his bedside nurse, and he said, "You know, I gotta tell you something." She's like, "What is it, Mr. Weinbrenner?" You know, and he's like, "An alien spacecraft crashed, and bodies were recovered. They're kept in an underground facility in Utah. You got to get this information to Bob Emenegger." She's like, "What?" You know, and he tells her this, and then he dies.
Ah.
So she, not having any idea what the hell he's talking about, she's like, "Well, look, God, this is this guy's dying wish. I got to find this guy Bob Emenegger, and I got to tell him." So she contacts Bob Emenegger. She says, "Look, you know, I'm a nurse at a veterans hospital in Texas, and I know you don't know who I am, and I, quite frankly, don't know who you are. But one of my patients, his name was Mr. Weinbrenner. Apparently, he was a colonel in the United States Air Force, and he was stationed at Wright-Pat. He was head of foreign technology, and he was adamant on his deathbed that he wanted you to know that an alien spacecraft crashed, and bodies, I think he said 3 bodies were recovered. And they're kept in an underground facility, I believe, in Utah." She was adamant about it. He was adamant about it. So anyway, so I read this whole thing up. So long story short, I get a hold of this guy Emenegger. And everybody following okay?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I get a hold of this guy Emenegger. And well, I won't give you the details on how I got in touch with him, but I did. It's academic, right? Get a hold of Emenegger and introduce myself. And he said, "Well, I checked your background, and a mutual friend said that you were a good person, and I'm willing to talk to you." I said, "Look, you know, why would Colonel Weinbrenner, you know, make this deathbed statement and want you to know about this?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "It's very interesting, James." He said, "Well, I worked on a film back in 1972 called UFOs Past, Present, and Future, and it was with another guy named Alan Sandler. And Alan, my partner at the time, had unprecedented access to military installations all around the country, and we were working with, I believe, the DOD and the Pentagon, Air Force, on a documentary on UFOs. And he said, "I never really had an interest in UFOs, but we were going to do something." I believe it was proposed on sort of, you know, cutting edge technology. The Department of Defense had suggested that we do this. The Air Force suggested we do this film called, you know, UFOs Past, Present, and Future. And we talk about, you know, UFOs basically, and real or hypothetical scenarios. And so he was at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It was circa 1972, maybe 1973, somewhere in there. And he had a lone moment with the head of the base. And there were rumors circulating about this whole Roswell crash and stuff at the time, I guess. And he said to the colonel in his office, "Hey, what's this I hear about this, you know, this spaceship crashing and, you know, aliens and bodies being recovered?" And he said that the colonel's response was very odd. He said, "You know," the colonel sort of stepped away from his desk, "you know, those damn Russians, we have just got to get a handle on those, make fighter jets and that technology." And he walked over to his bookshelf, and as he's talking about the Russians, he pulls a book off his shelf written by the late Dr. Jalen Hynek, who investigated UFOs on an official level, scientific advisor for Project Blue Book, you know, from 47, 48 until 69, you know, Project Grudge, Project Sign, Project Blue Book. And he hands the book to Emenegger, which basically says that UFOs are real on an official level from a guy who investigated UFOs for the United States Air Force for all this time, Hynek. And but he's talking about the Russians and these MiG fighter jets, and we got to get a handle on their technology and that sort of thing. And he thought, well, that's rather odd. Well, later he thought, well, why did he do that? Well, he did that because the room was probably bugged. So when he died, 30-something years later, he answered the real question that Bob had posed. So I said, wow, Bob, that's amazing. I said, now, Bob, tell me about this film you did. He said, well, you should see it. You should see it, you should read the book, and then we'll talk. So I get the film, UFOs, Past, Present, and Future, and in the movie, it's amazing, actually, because a lot of the people that participate are active. I'm thinking, how did these guys get access to all NORAD and Wright Pat and Holloman Air Force Base? And it's amazing. And they're basically talking about UFOs being real. Then they propose in the film a scenario, and I think how they put it is that it may or may not have happened, or it might happen, of a landing of a UFO at Holloman Air Force Base and the aliens getting out and interacting with the base commanders. And I thought, well, that's rather interesting, the way you phrased that. I said, why did you phrase it? It may have happened, it might happen, or it's a possible sort of, scenario. And he said, well, that's rather, he said, it's an interesting question, James. He said, we were working at the time with an audio-visual specialist at Norton Air Force Base named Paul Shartle. And Paul Shartle told us that he had footage of a flying saucer. He had seen footage of a flying saucer circa 1954 land at Holloman Air Force Base, the aliens getting out and interacting with the base commanders. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, I'm not kidding you. I said, where's Paul Shartle now?
Oh, go on, please.
And he said, Paul Shartle was killed in a car crash with his wife. I thought, well, he's got to have kids. And he was like, well, I haven't really, James, I haven't really thought about it. It's a kind of a cold case right now. I said, look, you're telling me that you spoke to the guy who personally saw footage of a flying saucer land at Holloman Air Force Base and aliens getting out and interacting with the base commanders, and that's what you base that scenario as, like, something that possibly has happened already or that might happen? It's very interesting the way they word it in the movie. And you base those illustrations on an actual footage that exists? He said, yes. He said, I knew Paul Shartle, and he was absolutely convinced the film footage was real. I said, well, why mention something if you're not going to show the real footage? He said, well, they were going to allow us to use it, and the last minute, the Air Force said, no, you can't use that footage. So I said, well, we got to notify Paul Shartle's kids. We started talking about this. Anyway, this is all weeks and weeks going by, right? And tell me if I'm boring you to death, because there's more to it here.
No, please continue.
Okay. So anyway, I get a phone. So this is all going down. I get a phone call from a UFO researcher. I don't know if I should mention her name or not. I probably shouldn't, but
or you
I get a phone call from her,
should.
and she's like, I understand you're in contact with, Bob Ebenegger. I say, yeah, I have been. She said, well, he's got some incredible footage of UFOs. I said, you mean the footage of Holloman Air Force Base? She said, no, another footage. I said, wait a minute. I've been in touch with this guy for weeks. He's never once mentioned the fact that he's got footage of UFOs. Not to me. She said, well, he has it, and I know he does. So I said, well, all right, well, let me call him back, and I'll find out. I call him up. I said, well, Mr. Ebenegger, I'd been in touch with our mutual friend. She shared with me that you are in possession of some pretty phenomenal official Air Force footage of UFOs. He says, oh, yes, that footage at Vandenberg. Yeah? I said, who has it? He said, my partner has it. And I said, your partner has the footage? Really? I said, well, what is it? He said, well, it's UFOs tracking an Atlas rocket. And Atlas rockets landed, taking off at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. in Out of the Blue, my previous film, Out of the Blue, one before my previous film, I interview a guy named Robert Jacobs, and he was like some sort of optical specialist in the Air Force, where he set up these high-powered telescopes with cameras, and they videotaped all stages of powered flight of an Atlas rocket, and he shared with me a story about how they captured flying saucers, or what appear to be flying saucers, that whiz around this thing, Atlas rocket, when it's traveling somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 miles an hour. And it's phenomenal footage, and I thought, wow, okay, so this guy's got that footage, or something like it. So I'm already thinking, I know this is possible, right? So I said, well, can you put me in touch with your partner? And he said, well, I'll let him know that you're interested, and whatever happens, happens. The guy calls me within 2 days. So I'm talking to him about this footage, and it sounds rather impressive. You know, it's like what appear to be flying saucers tracking an Atlas rocket at high speed, and just kind of checking it out, like circling around it and looking at it, and then shooting off. And I said, well, he said, yeah, so I got that. I said, yeah, you've seen it or something. He said, well, yeah, I also saw the footage of the saucer landing. I said, the saucer landing? What do you mean the saucer landing? He said, the footage of the saucer landing. I said, you mean at Edwards Air Force Base? No, at Holloman. I stopped the car. I pulled over to the side of the road, stopped the car, put it in park, turned the engine off. And I said, no, wait a minute, sir. You saw footage of a flying saucer land at Holloman Air Force Base? He said, yes, I did. I said, what was it? He said it was the flying saucer, the infamous flying saucer tail at Holloman, where a saucer comes in at I think it's like a couple thousand feet elevation. There's 3 of them. They're being escorted by F-86 fighter jets from the base, circa 1954, 52, 53, and 2 of the saucers peel off, and 1 comes in for a controlled landing, but it's kind of like wobbling as it comes down. I closed my eyes and I listened to him tell me the story. Now, he said that it kind of wobbled almost like it was in trouble, but it was wobbling like a top would wobble. And it slowly came down, and then 3 pods. He didn't say landing gear, he said pods. 3 pods opened up, and it landed. And then he said, just like in a Hollywood movie, in those sci-fi movies, a seamless door opened and dropped, and 3 creatures got out. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no. I said, what do they look like? He said they had tight-fitting suits on, very, very large noses, sort of a grayish-blue skin. I think he said grayish-blue skin, no chins, slits for mouths, very small mouths, and then their eyes went vertical like a cat, big eyes. And they had headgear on, some sort of headgear, and they had these little pieces on their hands for to communicate, which he assumed were like communication devices in front of their mouths. I said, you saw this footage. I said, your partner of 40 years doesn't know you saw this footage. He said, well, I saw it. I said, why haven't you told anyone? He said, well, he just sort of compartmentalized. I guess he put it in the back of his head. Your own partner of 45 years doesn't know. He said, well, I saw it. So there's actually footage on my Facebook account of this guy Paul Sartle talking about it. Now, he's sitting there saying that it might be something that the Air Force staged, but either way, going back to what you said about technology, harness technology, you know?
Yes.
Flying saucers, he said, I'm absolutely convinced that the footage was real, the flying saucer was real, but it might have been reverse-engineered technology that we had. I said, reverse-engineered flying saucers back in 1952? No way, right? Well, Paul Sartle, who worked at Norton Air Force Base Archive Department, I've got footage of him saying he's absolutely convinced it was not staged, it was not theater, it was a real event that happened, they documented it, and it slipped between the cracks, and somehow he got to watch it. And he showed it to his partner, the guys that were making the movie. He didn't show it to Bob Eminator. He missed the screening. He didn't get to see it. But this other guy did. So, somewhere, I don't know, because I know that I had heard rumors about this event for quite some time. There's rumors that Eisenhower was there and he had a meeting with the aliens, but that is as close to the source of that story as I've ever gotten.
How would you react if you actually had the privilege to meet an extraterrestrial? I mean, if you were there and you've seen that, I mean, it's one thing going on Larry King Live, but imagine looking at a being from another world. How would you react to that?
I just interviewed Travis Walton.
Oh, I just booked him for the show, actually.
Did you?
Yes.
And I once again, what I do a lot of times is when I try to memorize a story, I'll close my eyes and I'll have them recreate. I listened very carefully to what they're saying, and I did that with Travis. And quite honestly, that's the only one that I have met, only person I've met that I could say with certainty, certainly in my view, that it actually happened. I know there are other cases that have happened, but I absolutely believe him.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe the other witnesses.
And you know he'll be coming
to me, a horrifying experience.
Oh, I know. I mean, can you imagine that? What he went through.
And then everyone calling him a liar?
Yeah, oh my God, man. I can't even, and people were saying Fire in the Sky. Yes, that's the movie we're talking about, or the guy that the movie portrayed his experience was Fire in the Sky.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also mentioned in 1897, Aurora, Texas, I believe that was, there was actually a UFO crash back then, right?
Exploded and hit the ground, and apparently there were bodies.
Yeah, and that's
There's
before we even flew.
There's another one that happened a couple years earlier, and that one's in Dublin, Texas, and it made the headlines. I just investigated at the archives in Dublin, Texas, not too long ago. Apparently, one happened earlier than 1897. They called them like something airships.
Yeah. Now we only got about 15 minutes, James, and I'm telling you, I could go on and on with you. But I
hope I'm not boring you to death with it.
No. Everybody in the room saying great story. I wanted to ask you this. Rumor has it, if you have a pair of Generation 3 goggles, night vision goggles, if you look to the skies, you could actually see alien craft. And George Norrie actually said that he did this and seen something. Have you heard about that?
Yes, I have heard about that. And I know a guy who's, I don't know if anyone out there knows who Tom DeLonge is. Tom DeLonge is part of a band called Blink 182. They were quite big in the 90s.
Okay, yes.
Tom DeLonge is a huge UFO buff. And he has those I can't remember, they call them Generation 3 or what they are.
Yeah, Generation 3 night vision goggles.
Yeah, he swears by it. He swears by it. He says you can see them. They're like orbs darting around in the night sky.
The only problem is they're about $3,000 to $5,000.
That's exactly. I think he paid more than that.
Yeah, they're up there, man. They're definitely up there.
It's expensive to see a UFO.
Yeah, it is, but it might be worth it. If you had the money, though, I mean, hey, people are going to be paying millions of dollars just to go out into space now, right? Virgin?
We should pool our money, all the listeners out there, all pitch in a couple $100.
I'm telling you.
Buy a pair, go out in the desert and do it.
Yes, and film it, and be like, this is it. This is the truth. You can see it. I want to go back real quick in time here, James, to November 7th, Chicago O'Hara, the airport.
Yes.
It was a UFO that hovered over that airport for a period of time. I know that you were about to cover this, or you were looking for witnesses, and
I found witnesses.
Okay.
I offered them $10,000 a piece, and they wouldn't come forward.
Oh my God! Are you serious?
I swear on my mother's ashes.
Oh my God!
And they told me about the experience. They said it was a disc. That it hovered over Terminal 17, I believe it was, and I believe it was over there for a while.
Yeah,
and then when it took off vertically and punched a hole in the cloud.
Yep.
And I actually have the cockpit, the tower recordings, the recordings because they're public. They're public. Somebody from Europe sent them to me. I have them somewhere, and it's really funny because they're going, "Look, Frank, I'm not high. I'm not on drugs. I'm telling you right now, I'm not drunk. I'm not high. There's a disc or a frisbee or a disc, like a frisbee, like a UFO, hovering over us. There's a pilot who saw it. Apparently the pilot took a photograph. We know that someone took a photograph. We have the recording of them talking about it, but nothing's ever been revealed. And a really good friend of mine is a United Airlines pilot, and he lives right down the street. He's a really good guy named Lance. And he said, "Yeah, man, I heard about that." He goes, "My my co-pilot buddies have talked about it. Yeah, that thing really happened, but no one wants to talk. And what happened was that the United Airlines personnel that I personally spoke to said, yes, it happened. Yes, it was a flying saucer. Yes, it hovered over the terminal. But if I talk about it, I'll lose my job. So if you can't pay me enough money so I don't have to work, then I can't come forward. I can't afford to lose my job. We will lose our jobs.
Oh my God! What is with the secrecy, man? I mean, why in the hell does the government suppress this? I mean,
here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know, you got the Robinson panel that was convened in 1953, right? Now, you had that major sighting in 1952 over the Capitol building, which was pretty major.
Yes.
That was a big flap. I mean, that was irrefutable as far as I'm concerned. You know, you had General John Sanford get up and go before the people. I mean, he made that press conference, which was apparently one of the biggest press conferences at the end of World War II. And he basically, he pretty much says, look, this is nothing that we have. He basically says they're real. Then they convene. There's an internal debate going on in the Air Force. Do we disclose the truth or not? They convene this panel, the Robinson panel. I think it's by around 1953, late 1952, 53. What are we going to do about this problem? You know? And they debated, and they said, look, we can't deny it necessarily. Why don't we adopt this policy of ridiculing those who see them? And that's what was adopted, and it's a very effective policy. It was very, very effective. And if you think about it, no airline company wants to be associated with pilots, because they're wacko, or they could be interpreted as being that way, that see UFOs. It's not good for business. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like this huge conspiracy of the airline company or that the government, putting the kibosh down. It could be as simple as United Airlines saying, the hell if we want to, what's going to happen to our stocks when suddenly we reveal that our pilots are seeing UFOs?
How do you think the public
Don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely convinced there's a cover-up.
Yeah, there is. There's no doubt about it.
I have no doubt about that. I know that for a fact. But an incident like that could be as simple. I mean, then the FAA put out some flimsy, ridiculous story about atmospheric phenomenon. I'm like, come on. It really pisses me off.
The swamp
it's so transparent when you've done a little bit of homework.
Yep.
It's so transparent.
How do you think the public would react to full disclosure? Do you think that's one of the problems?
Out windows.
Do you think that's one of the problems, though, that why our government don't want to reveal such a thing? Not to mention that, these things are over the Capitol building, but we can't do a damn thing about it. But how do you think the people would react? I mean, do you think there would be collapsing of churches?
Well, let me back up a second here, because this is a very interesting point.
Okay.
I interviewed a General Dennis Letty in Paris in 2008. He spearheaded the whole movement of the Cometa Group. Cometa was the most strongly worded pro-UFO document ever written in any language from people that were not anonymous, military officials in France, called the Cometa Report. It was published in 1999. And I asked him, he was a general in the Air Force, I said, General, why don't we tell the public? Why don't we tell the truth? He said, no military agency is you simply cannot tell the public that we don't have control of our airspace. You can't do it. And that's a very good point. It's like, think about it. We pay them to protect us. And I'm not saying they're out there to kill us and destroy us and blow us up. But when you have objects of unknown origin whizzing around with impunity in our airspace, and flying rings around our fastest jets, they're just not going to disclose that information to the people.
It almost makes them look arrogant, doesn't it?
And who the hell? Let me tell you, I remember talking to the governor of Arizona about the whole 1997 Phoenix Lights case.
Mm-hmm.
He said they scrambled, I think it was F-16s to intercept. They had to pull the pilot out of his seat. He couldn't walk. When he got up, when he approached that huge object, I think it was like a mile across.
Yeah.
It took off so fast, it just left him like he was standing still. I mean, it was just gone.
I can't even imagine.
Imagine something that big moving like that.
No, I can't. I mean, why do you think they do this? I mean, it's like they show off in our skies, like they're letting us know you can't touch us. You know what I mean? I mean,
probably because we can't. I don't know. I mean, maybe we're under some sort of observation. Maybe they put us here. Who the hell knows?
And you know what? A lot of people...
time travelers. Maybe they're interdimensional. Maybe they're all of above, all the above. I don't know.
Yep, and that's the biggest question, James. That's the biggest question is
I wish I could tell your listeners out there that I knew, but I don't.
And you know what? That's good, though.
I have not a shadow of doubt they're under intelligent control. There are beings at times behind the wheel. I'm sure they have unmanned probes as well, but definitely beings. I mean, there's a few cases that I absolutely unequivocally believe. Travis Walton, Betty Barney Hill, Allagash 4, that happened.
Now, I wanted to ask you real quick, and then I'm going to let you close it out. But you were there with Buzz Aldrin. What was that like? I mean, I know he believes that aliens are out there, and he said that he's seen things. What was it like speaking to that guy? I really would like to get him on his show. I can never get a hold of him.
Yeah, it's really hard. And, my connection to him, Faye Ann Potter, which is his sister I was good friends with for 2 decades, she just died last week.
Oh, man. Sorry to hear about that.
He just lost his sister.
Oh.
And here's the thing. He agreed to meet with me back in 1998 in the south of France. He was on book tour for some book he'd done. He agreed to meet with me knowing damn well what we were going to talk about, UFOs. His sister Jan Rooney, Mickey Rooney's wife, and his sister had told me stories about his encounters. One was when he was piloting in a jet for I think it was the Air Force, and one was when he was on the way to the moon. But I didn't have the full skinny on the stories. I knew that there were encounters with UFOs, but I didn't know any of the details. And long story short, when I flew, he agreed to meet with me and do an interview. When I flew to the south of France, very expensive. I had to borrow the money, get a camera crew together. We get down there, and he kept putting it off. Well, we're in Monte Carlo, man. It was like $400 a day for a dive hotel. I couldn't afford to stay there for any longer. And I finally said, "Look, with all due respect, Mr. Aldrin, you agreed for an interview. I got a crew here. I can't wait forever." He said, "Meet me tomorrow morning in my hotel room, hotel lobby." So we went to this hotel lobby the following morning. And last minute, the concierge walked up. "Mr. Fox, we have a telephone call." It was Mr. Aldrin in his bedroom, and he said, "I can't do it." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because Paul Allen has just invested in SETI, and he was labeled a UFO quack. I'm trying to get funding from Congress to develop a rocket to put civilians into space, and I can't jeopardize that initiative by coming out with this story." And he said, "And what difference will it make with my story anyway?" Okay. That was 1998. So terrible disappointment, as you can imagine. All that wasted money, time, effort, really disappointing. Okay, that was 1998. Fast forward 2007. Now I'm going on Larry King with him, and I know everything he did to me, like that whole thing. And then I watched him lie to the American public right there on Larry King. And Fife Symington turned to me in the green room, and I said, "I'm going to really lay into him on live television on CNN." And Fife said to me, "James, he's an American icon. He's a very respected figure. He's the first moon landing mission with Neil Armstrong. You cannot disrespect him like that. You can't do that." And so I was very diplomatic. I poked and prodded a couple times. He was like a vice. He wasn't going. It was very frustrating. To knowing that I had that conversation with him in 98 or 99 in the south of France, talking about his sighting, talking about the fact that his story won't make any difference, and talking about the fact that he couldn't disclose it to the American public, to the world, for fear of ridicule, and the fact that he would jeopardize his initiative to develop this rocket, and then watch him lie to everybody and lie to Larry King and lie on public television, on national television. It was so frustrating. And I just sat there and I thought, son of a bitch.
Well, I know, man. I know exactly what you're feeling. And before I end the show, I always like to give my guest the last word. If there's anything you would like to say to anybody out there listening right now, what would it be?
Suspend judgment just for a moment and imagine what if. What if UFOs are real? And I'm absolutely convinced that they are, and that's pretty much what keeps me going. If anyone would like to ask me further questions or check out any of my work, they can go to iknowwhatisaw.themovie.com.
Yes, I meant to ask you about that. All your websites, go ahead and link them up, man.
Yeah, I've got there's a petition that I'm working on that I'm not going to announce yet because I'm going to wait till the show gets revealed. But I have a petition pushing for, basically truth behind this whole thing. It's havewebeenvisited.com, but people can check it out. But I don't need them to sign the petition yet. I'm not really announcing that publicly just yet. But then, if anyone wants, I have a special 4-disc pack for sale on my website. It's like $29 or $39 for 4 DVDs. It's got all my works. It's got the National Press Club Raw, at the revised version of Out of the Blue, narrated by Peter Cody, I Know What I Saw, and 50 Years of Denial, 4 DVDs for $10 each, including shipping and tax if you're out of state. So if anyone's interested in that, they can watch some trailers, they can check out my work. If you like what you see, support it. If you're not, don't.
Well, I'll tell you this right now. I'm glad you said that because I was going to ask about your movies, and now that you got that 4-pack deal, I'll definitely be picking that up. And I always like to support the guests and pay for it instead of having them send the free copies. You're out there trying to dig for the truth. You need all the help you can get, man. We appreciate what you do. Keep digging, but don't get yourself killed.
Hey, thank you so much, John. And listen, in about a month, I'll be able to talk about this TV show I'm working on.
Well, we'll have to get you on then and talk about that.
Stay in touch.
All right, stay in touch, buddy. All right, talk to you later.
Again.
Good night.
Bye-bye.